my Gucci Spiky Boo Boo. Welcome to my channel. Tonight is the night we're going to talk about the men. It's time for the men talk, all right? Because I'm getting ready for bed. I'm already in bed, and I've been thinking about, as one does, boys, all right? I love men. Hello, men. We still love you. Everyone loves you. Everyone needs you. We need the divine masculine. The divine feminine needs the divine masculine, and everyone in between. Whoever you are, whether you're a girl, boy, anyone in between, this could be relevant to you. I'm talking about spiritual divine energies. I will be talking about men and women, however, because this is what I know. All right, so quick disclaimer. I am part of the hetero world, all right? I'm in the hetero dating world. I did not choose this. This is what I was given, all right? The goddess of love dealt me this deck of cards. So I'm talking about what I know. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I hope that this will resonate for a bunch of different people, Boo. And specifically, if you're a man and you're living in this world and you're a spiritual Boo, or maybe you're not particularly spiritual, but you're curious about spirituality, or you're discovering your divine masculinity, this video is for you. All right, so my whole spiel on men is that men have been sold a terrible, terrible lie. We live in a patriarchal society, my baby, and we live in a society that has constructed its narratives around the differences between men and women, that paint men as detached, as unemotional, as violent, as really kind of hating and despising women and the feminine energy within all of us. And women as weak, women as seeking a love and connection and commitment, kind of pathetic in some ways, women as feeling ambivalent about their sexualities and romance, men as being powerful and aggressive sexually to the point where there's some people today who still have scientific, posts at very prominent world universities who believe and have suggested that, doing bad things to women by men is justifiable in an evolutionary kind of a way, which I rebuke all of this. This is all pseudoscience, and it is all a product of the society that we live in. But specifically when it comes to dating, baby, I'm going to talk about men and how you've been put in a terrible bind. It's like a triple bind almost. You have, on the one hand, all the dating advice out there, which comes from these, Christian post-Abrahamic traditions that we all kind of are embroiled in. The belief that men are somehow superior. Inherently, there's a lot of privilege to this too. So let's just admit that. And I know a lot of people are going to get triggered by this video in all kinds of different ways. I'm triggered, babe, because we're all triggered, because we've all been, it's like we've all been divided, by the powers that be. So that maybe, we're not, the more united we are, the more we work together, the more we love each other, the less power they probably have, but, whoever they is or are. But, that's just the power dynamic of society. So men have been sold these three narratives when it comes to romance and when it comes to women. Number one narrative, the most prominent, is kind of the middle of the road, a patriarchal, pseudo-evolutionary kind of idea that men are just kind of programmed this way. Men are unfeeling. They were programmed evolutionarily to be hunters, to seek out the maximum amount of partners. They're unfaithful, objectify women, only get turned on by, very prominent looks in women. And when the physical attraction is no longer there, men lose interest because they're not programmed to be affectionate and to have deeper bonds with women. Therefore, they're basically, the way that these narratives present men to me, it almost sounds like it's like only maybe a step above or a step down from a monkey. And I'm not saying that you are, babies. It's just like how it sounds to me in a modern dating kind of love coaching. And that includes, some more liberal coaches and people who, talk about collaborative partnerships between men and women. It still comes across like that. It's about, the buzzwords for me are always like hunter-gatherer, or men are out there for the hunt, or men are visual, or men, and they can't help themselves. And of course your man is going to be looking at other women. Of course your man is going to be like that. It kind of it's insulting to men, and you know what I'm talking about, boys. Especially, look, and it doesn't matter what age you're at, right? If you're like a young man, or if you're a more mature bit, okay, if you're a boomer like me, whatever. But you've heard it all before, and it probably hasn't sat right with you, because I know, I have an internal knowing, a spiritual knowing, and we have history to show us, and social psychology, for example, to show us that these narratives are incorrect, but they're very intuitive. It's a simple narrative to put out there, and it kind of sounds like it might be true, so it becomes really prominent. The newspapers write about it, the magazines, the funding gets put into that, and then suddenly it becomes this whole social narrative that is presented to us as truth, and it's really nothing more than the legacy of a lot of kind of 19th century thinking about women and men, which was basically connected to things like eugenics and white men in power who wanted to propagate whatever it is, the little privileged worlds that they'd built up for themselves. So that's really the first narrative. It's that kind of like, watered down dating coach who's all about like, women want status. Women don't care about anything, but like, can you provide for the offspring? And like, men just want like beauty, and like not even beauty, but like big booty or whatever. Like, look, that's kind of fun. Thinking about things like that is kind of fun, but it's completely unrealistic, and it doesn't really check out in terms of historical facts and in terms of like how people would have lived in societies, prehistoric and later societies. That's number one. But also in our lives today, it's kind of insulting to say that men have no power over themselves, or like that men are emotionally unintelligent. It's just simply not true. The father of modern psychoanalysis was a man. It wasn't a mother. Well, because he had so much privilege, it had to be a man. But also, it was a man, right? Sigmund Freud was actually, he probably was not very emotionally intelligent, but that's another thing. But you get my point. It's so insulting and so detrimental to men and boys to be saying that. However I identify, I am speaking to over age, whatever. Like, you should be an adult if you're on YouTube. But you know what I'm saying. And if you're dating, but if I just don't think that men want to be characterized in this way, and the men that I meet in real life don't behave like that. The men that these dating coaches or these dating gurus or podcasters or whatever, the Joe Rogans of the world, I know who they're talking to, but these people don't date, because I just don't see them in the wild, babe. They don't exist, because love is not a game of hunting. Love is not about the lion getting the gazelle. Love is not about like, forcing yourself on a woman, no matter what these people tell you. Usually they're men too, which is interesting. Although a lot of women internalize these narratives too. But you don't see that in nature, in society, because no gazelle wants to, like, the gazelle doesn't want to date the lion that's chasing her, right? Like, the gazelle wants to get away and maybe even come back sometime later and seek revenge upon the lion that tried to kill her, right? Like, that's just like, there's nothing, okay, unless you have a very specific fetish, there's nothing erotic about that, and nothing gratifying, and nothing that tells you this woman actually wants you for what you have to offer as a human being, and not just as a predator or as someone who overpowers her or buys your love from her. And this is such an internalized narrative in the dating world. You see it everywhere. Every dating app, every dating code, pretty much all of them really will tell you something along the lines of like, men are very visual. Men, they're not deep emotional thinkers. Women are multitaskers, all of this kind of stuff. Women want to settle down, biological clocks and all this, and men don't have these biological clocks, which they do, by the way, which also biological clocks, social construct. So that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so it's a very reductive approach, and I am sure, and I just, to be honest, I don't see a lot of material out there of anyone really talking about it and debunking it in a meaningful way. And I like to do a little bit more of that. It will take making a wider video about it, and doing like evidence-based stuff and quoting research and debunking certain mythologies. So that's like a whole other project. But today I just want to sit down and have a conversation with you about that, because I feel like it's almost like a nicer, warmer way to do it, as a conversation together. Me inviting you here to, to my bedroom as well, and us having a conversation about it one-on-one in a very human way, and almost like, in this like spiritual inner knowing way, that the narratives that you're hearing about yourselves are incorrect. So that's the number one narrative that's the most prominent out there today. That there's a big difference between men and women in terms of what they want from relationships. And, men are just like programmed to kill, destroy, hunt, and all this. It's like you have no minds of your own, no heart, no soul, no nothing. It's just like, whatever, you're a machine, which you're not, baby. You're so much more than that. And you know it. The second narrative is kind of an offshoot of that, and it's the evolutionary psychology, where it all came from. So it's, these authors from the 20th century, late second half of the 20th century, like, Richard Dawkins, who was, the it girl, the it boy, anyone between of the 20th century for a lot of people. Basically, his whole argument, and by the way, so he's like an Oxford professor, but a lot of his work has been totally debunked because it is, at the end of the day, pop psychology. He's a popular writer, but because he has this Oxford connection and everything, and because he's a white man of privilege, he's always been taken very seriously, and he's super popularized this idea that human behavior, like from wearing lipsticks to, like, why women dye their hair and all this, is like totally comes from the monkeys. All right, it's because we're apes. It's because we're like, because of the caves and because of the prehistoric times, and everything people do is for procreation. And the way procreation happens through violence, the violence perpetrated by the man upon the woman. And that's just how it is. And, men basically innately want to destroy women through sexuality, and women just want to have babies with the biggest alpha male in the, the hairiest ape in the crowd, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. Not even gonna get into it. Such pseudoscience, but for a long time was super popular. And a lot of the ideas you will hear from dating coaches, whether they're men or women, do come from people like Dawkins and other evolutionary psychologists like Pinker. By the way, people like Dawkins, not here to rain on anybody's parade, but just look at the kind of histories these people have in terms of their own personal life and why they write about science in a popular way, in the way that they do, why their perspective is such. Dawkins, for example, apparently good friends with Epstein, went on the plane trips to the island quite a few times. And a lot of the ideologies he's pushed is that, women, women are kind of objects in the eyes of men who just want to procreate. So they will, choose the most available or vulnerable, subjects to their, assaulty advances. Not surprised Dawkins was trying to live the dream. You know what I'm saying? Okay, but this is my little dig at Dawkins. He's been my nemesis for a long time. But you know what I'm saying, babe. These boomer men with their podcasts or their chairs at Oxford, whatever it is, they have something at stake. They're proposing a narrative that justifies a lot of bad behavior. It's interesting how that narrative is always propagated by men of privilege, of a certain age, and of a certain racial demographic of power, and it allows them to do all those things, but maybe it doesn't allow all the men to do all those things, because not all men are in a position of the power that these people have. So just bear that in mind. And a lot of them, they're boomers, and they kind of low-key hate women anyway, because that's how they were raised. So, all of those points. So this is like your two narratives. The more watered-down version of this is the modern dating coach saying, well, ultimately men are only after one. Basically, you're saying men want sex and women want commitment. This is never going to work. Like, how is society ever going to work? This is like impossible, right? Like, why do we even bother? And the second one is the more in-depth part of this, the mother of it all, or rather father of it all, which is that, basically we're all thoughtless animals programmed only for one thing. And it's in conflict with each other. But men are justified to do all the violence because that's just how they were programmed by Father Nature. So that's the second one. And the third one is the other side of the coin, which is the idea that all masculinity is toxic, and a man showing might, protection, violence, service is always a toxic thing, and it's bad, and that men should not exhibit those characteristics. I personally don't agree with that vein of thought in feminism and postmodern feminism. I don't think masculinity is inherently toxic, and I think a lot of masculine behaviors that could be toxic in their shadow form are very positive and good in their exalted form when they're about raising the vibration of the collective. So I don't, what I mean? Like, I don't think necessarily fighting things out is toxic masculinity. I think a man protecting a woman is toxic masculinity. I don't think any of that is toxic masculinity. It can be. But anything can be toxic. Everything has a shadow side. I think the ultimate issue here today is that men, you've been told a lot of things about yourselves by a patriarchal society run by people who have a lot of money and power, who want to keep things going as they are. And the more divided we are, the better it is for them. The more, and women believe all this too. I have so many girlfriends. Most people I know believe these narratives that, oh, a man just wants you for one thing and then, he'll leave you or like whatever. And I just want, babies or resources. Like people internalize these things, but, people internalize a lot of things. In the Middle Ages, people thought that the, end of days was coming. A lot of people still think that. People in the Middle Ages thought God could like see them all the time, all kinds of things. People in the Middle Ages thought that the devil was waiting for them. They really believed it. Doesn't mean that it was true. So yeah, Bill, I think you've been sold a difficult situation here. Women have it a little bit, not that women have it easier. Women, let me be very clear, women do not have it easier in this patriarchal society. Women have it so much harder, of course. But when it comes to like liberating oneself spiritually of these beliefs and of these limitations, women have it easier because their narrative of liberation has been more clear, because it has been the path, the female Tao in some ways, for a long time. And men don't have that. So it's easy to fall into, Jordan Peterson. Why did he become so popular? Because men really, I keep saying this tonight. I'm on a roll tonight. I didn't even know I was feeling so passionate about this. It's because men get sold this, terrible narrative and no alternative. So he was someone talking about masculinity, so he became popular. I really see no one else on the other side addressing men in a way, or masculine bibus in a way that would be productive and constructive, and that would reunite with them with their feminine counterpart, spiritually speaking. So here I am, baby. Let's do it. Look, I think there's a fourth narrative. I think there's a narrative of mutual respect. I think there's a narrative of seeing the divine feminine in women. I think you don't have to be hunting women at all. This is not what we've been doing for centuries. There are civilizations in the past where women used to walk around naked or with their bare breasts, like the Minoan women in the regions before ancient Greece. This is a civilization that predated ancient Greece, the Hellenic and classical Greek periods. Women wore their bare breasts out. They were prominent figures in that society. Nobody was, attacking them. Nobody was propagating the species there. Nothing like that. You know what I mean? Like it was a beautiful society based on a more harmonious way of men and women being together, because their divine feminine, divine masculine selves were still in union based on an older matriarchal model of being. And that's what I want. That's what I want to return to, baby. I'm going to do more videos on this, but that's kind of my proposition. I'm just looking at my phone. I'm about to run out of space, so I'm going to cut this short. We're going to do another video soon about how we can kind of, now go to something better. There is a fourth way. It's the way of the goddess. It's about worshiping the goddess within the women around you, respecting women, trying to understand women. I think we're so disconnected these days. We just don't understand each other anymore. It's about relearning each other's ways. And women also, can come into an understanding and love for the masculine, the true masculine, not the shadow masculine that we've been given by patriarchy, but the true beautiful masculine from times old, from, whatever you want to call it, the age of Atlantis, the age before patriarchy, the big matriarchies of the world. I think we all still carry that beautiful memory within us, and this is why I still love you. This is why I still love you, my men. I love you because we need you, and this is a time to rediscover the true divine masculine spirit. All right, I'm going to go now. Have a good night. Stay sparkly, stay gorgeous, stay moisturized, and maybe angels protect you.